wonderful meeting many of you along the way, and I've had a great time here. It's been a lot of fun and educational as well. I've always said that coaching is continuous education. You never stop learning, because every time you coach a different person, you learn something else. It's pretty amazing. What makes a good coach? That's a good question. You know, in the U.S., we have a lot of athletics in high school and in college. And having good athletes is what makes a good coach. You know, we in college levels, we recruit athletes, give them scholarships and things like that. And so if you win, they automatically assume you're a good coach. But it may be that you're just a good recruiter, and you're very good at bringing people to your team and your university. So it's difficult to judge really who the good coaches are if you're just looking at winning and loss records. But often, this is what's considered to be a good coach, is having good athletes. I was fortunate enough one year to coach a national team down in South America with another coach. And he's the one who taught me this. He said, athletes make coaches. Coaches don't make athletes. And it's very true. To a big extent, it's very, very true. Now, the coach can help an athlete become a lot better. This particular guy who was the coach that I'm talking about that told me that, he coached at Ohio State University for a number of years and then retired. And when we coached together when he retired. And the first year he was the coach at Ohio State, he happened to have a pretty good runner on his team named Jesse Owens. You know, they don't get much better than that, but that was the first person he ever got to coach in college. He said, that made me a great coach right off the bat, because Jesse was one of the greatest jumpers and sprinters that there ever has been. So it is true. Certainly, who you work with and the athletes that you get to have on your team are going to help you decide whether you're a great coach, or maybe even stay interested in it if you have enthusiastic runners. I'll look back a little bit on my career, because I've lived everywhere in the U.S. I was born in the state of Michigan. Didn't like it very much, so when I was 6 weeks old, I moved to California. and lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a number of years, and then to South California, and then to the state of Washington for a year, and then back to California, and then I started college in Colorado. But while I was in California at high school, it was an experience that probably directed me into sport and athletics at all. And that was, what is a goal? We had different colored shorts in our physical education classes in high school. And if you did really well on fitness tests, you got to wear gold shorts, and everybody knew you were special, because everybody else had blue shorts. Okay? So in my case, what was a gold? Here were the events that you had to do to earn gold. You had to be timed in 2 different running events and a swimming event. I don't even remember the distance of the running events, but you had to be certain times in them to hit the standard. And you had to swim 150 yards for time, not just to prove you could cover the distance. You had to do a 34-foot triple jump. You had to do 15 one-handed burpees. I don't know if you know what a burpee is. They're like squat thrusts. You go down on one hand, throw your feet back, bring your feet back up, come up, then you go down on the other hand and do it. Not both hands together, alternately hands. And you had to do 15 of them in 30 seconds. You had to do 18 chin-ups, palms away. You had to do 24 bar dips between parallel bars, and you had to climb a 20-foot rope from a seated position on the floor for 20 feet, arms only, in 10 seconds. And if you did all those things, you were gold. And in my graduating class, high school graduating class, there were 550 students. 10 of them were golds. 10. 6 years later, 3 of those 10 were in the Olympic Games. In sports they didn't even do in high school, because they were fit. It's one of the biggest problems we have in our country. I don't know if yours are the same, but physical education is going downhill, and we're not developing our students, our young kids anymore. The only place they get any development is joining a club of some kind or a sport of some kind, because they're not getting general fitness, which is really, really important. And this I'll always remember. I don't even know where my gold shorts are, but anyway, we got gold shorts. And you had to replace them twice a year. Just earning it once didn't do it. If you earned it in the fall and you couldn't earn it in the spring, you had to turn them back in. But the neat thing was that we had younger kids starting to practice these tests. And a couple of years after I graduated, we had the first 9th grader earn gold shorts. Well, if it spreads down like that, then you're going to have a lot of young kids that are fit, I'll tell you. And that's going to help tremendously. So I'll always remember my gold days. And I went from high school in California to a little town called Helmville, Montana. So I've been everywhere. Helmville. The 6 of us in my family moved to Helmville. And we changed the population of that town from 49 to 55. Last year we were up there, it has 60-some now. It's really, really grown. It was interesting. And then in college I swam competitively, and I shot on the rifle team. And so I was pretty good at shooting and pretty good at swimming. And then I went into the military, because in those days, this was during the Korean conflict, everybody went to the military in the U.S. And you knew that, so you didn't have to plan, what am I going to do when I graduate from college? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in the Army for a couple of years. And they sent me to Korea, and they had a triathlon. A military triathlon, would involve pistol shooting with a .45 caliber pistol, swimming and running. Those were the 3 events. Well, I'd shot for 4 years competitively, and I'd swam for 8 years competitively, so that was a natural for me. I figured anybody can run. I had never run before, but it's the simplest thing to do. You may not do it well, but you can do it. It's not a skill. You don't have to learn how to swim, or how to run like you do swimming. Anyway, I won the triathlon in Korea, and that sent me to the modern pentathlon. So that's my sport, was modern pentathlon, which included swimming, shooting, and running, plus horseback riding and épée fencing. Those were the 5 events. And that was sent to Texas to do that. And I made it to 2 Olympics and 3 World Championships in modern pentathlon. And I moved over to Sweden for a while. Went to school in Stockholm at GHH, used to be called VCE, but they changed the name of the school. It's an unbelievably good sports school. And I had the greatest physiologist there ever was in Per-Olof Ostrand. Ostrand was my exercise physiology teacher. I also had another great teacher called E.H. Christensen from Denmark. So I had outstanding teachers, and that's where I got interested in physiology and exercise physiology, was from Ostrand. And then I left Sweden and came back to Oklahoma and worked with a guy named Balke, Bruno Balke, one of the greatest physiologists we ever had in our country. He was brought from Germany to start our space program because he was an altitude specialist. He was a medical doctor and an exercise physiology PhD as well. So I worked with him for several years, and so I had 2 of the greatest mentors, if you will, that anybody's ever had for what I wanted to do. Then I went from got to be a university coach at a university in Oklahoma. And that was going great. We were beating everybody. Till we got a new president, and he dropped the program. Don't hire me. Every place I go, they drop the program. I've been to 5 different places where within 3 years of time, they dropped the program completely. They dropped that program, so I moved to Peru. And I became the national coach of the Peruvian team in South America. And certainly, altitude was part of that issue. I had athletes who lived at 12 and 13,000 feet and lower, 10,000, 5,000, in different altitudes. So we continued with that, and when I moved back, I started my PhD work at Michigan and transferred to Wisconsin because my friend Balke, that I had been working with, became a professor at Wisconsin. So I went over to work with him some more, and we did more altitude research. We started real serious altitude research in the early 60s when they announced Mexico